When you hear the phrase soft as steel, what do you think of? While the word steel might conjure up images such as massive high-rise buildings, where does the soft part come in? And what exactly does this mean in our work and in our lives? Welcome to the Soft as Steel podcast with your host, Dennis Duran, featuring engaging conversations with a wide range of industry leaders around soft skills, how we practice love, inclusion, social justice, and compassionate leadership that's everlasting in the workplace. And now, here's Dennis Duran.
I'm especially pleased to welcome today's guest, Brent Darnell, the man Engineering News Record describes as transforming the construction industry's alpha males into service-focused leaders. He's an international best-selling author and leading authority on emotional intelligence. Brent's the president and owner of Brent Darnell International, a training and consulting company that maximizes company success by tapping into the soft skills or the emotional intelligence of each employee. His best-selling book, The People-Profit Connection, How Emotional Intelligence Can Maximize People Skills and Maximize Your Profits, has sold over 100,000 copies worldwide. In his book, he introduces readers to his unique approach to teaching emotional intelligence skills in technically trained professions. He has been called relevant to performance on every job in any industry by emotional intelligence pioneer Kate Cannon, and is recognized as a recognized expert in his field. I met Brent a few years ago through a mutual industry thought leader, Gretchen Gagel. I would say about Brent this, that his calling for over the past 20 years has focused on the critical need to recognize that tough technical folks like those in the construction industry are people just like all of us. His passion to teach people how to understand themselves and others in a manner that leads to fuller, more satisfying, and happier lives at work and everywhere else. Brent, welcome to the Soft as Steel podcast.
Wow, Dennis, thank you so much. What a great introduction. And it's just a pleasure to be here. And I always love getting introduced to like-minded folks in the industry. And I love what you're doing. And I love the tack that you're taking and the direction that you've gone. I think it's spot on. And I'm so glad that there are other people doing this work, because this is important work for the industry.
Yeah. And you've been doing it so magnificently again for over 20 years. That's a long time. I'm almost an infant in carrying this message because, as you know, up until just the last few years, I was working in the industry for general contractors, with specialty contractors, delivering training, which I still do. But a few years back, and I think I reached out to you when I began the journey to try to carry the message of understand the importance of people's qualities. And two words are a summary of many of the greatest qualities that particular leaders need to have. And that's those two words that you talk about with great energy and expertise, and that's emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a catch-all, but it really does embody everything that you do with soft skills. And we're seeing that it's even ties into performance. It ties into peak levels of mental, physical, and emotional performance. It ties into mental health stuff. It ties into diversity and inclusion. It ties into all these industry issues that we're grappling with right now. And it's all about that fundamental emotional profile and the competence that the people have to be able to embrace and really address those issues and problems head on.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. You know, in the introduction, I mentioned the Engineering News Record quote that talked about alpha males.
Yeah.
Which obviously here, as we sit in 2022, on the backside of a unique 2-year span of experience for every living, breathing human being, the term alpha males is still alive, and certainly is still alive in our industry, but against a backdrop of wider interests. I know that you viewed my summit, and you'll remember that I talked about I had 4 different breakouts, and I want to touch on each of them with you. And that's one of the reasons I was so anxious to have this conversation. I had the first conversation in that summit was about love, and I want to get your thoughts about that. Yep. The second was about inclusion. The third was about social justice, and the final hour was about leadership. So when we talk about the alpha male, that haunts the industry for generations as a male-dominant industry, tough, hard as concrete personalities, total control folks, do it my way or get off my job site. Mm-hmm. The alpha males are still alive in our generation, but as you continue all your great work, are you seeing some, I don't know what the right way to say it is, some evolution, or perhaps are the numbers of folks that portray the traits of an alpha male, are they fewer in number? Are they generational? Tell us, give us your wisdom.
I don't know. I think it's across the board. I think it really gets down to the individual. And I get a lot of younger people that they just say they don't play well in the sandbox. And, and here's the thing about alphas. I love alphas. Like, they're my peeps. I love working with them. They're the drivers. They get things done. They have such good leadership traits. And the thing that holds them back or stagnates their career or their efficacy on projects is that missing interpersonal stuff with empathy and social responsibility and being a good team member and interpersonal relationships. So I always tell them, look, what if I could give you some stuff that you could work on that would get you better results and a lot less wear and tear on you? Would you be interested in that? Mm-hmm. And they all go, yeah, of course, because they're all about results. So we talk really frankly about, people kind of see you as jerky. And if that's what you want, then you're doing great. Just keep going. But if you want to do something different, if you want to connect with them on a deeper level, to be able to motivate them better, to be able to really create a sense of team and a sense of human connection, then that's what this work is about. And they're all over it. I mean, I think they're so starved for these discussions that once you give them permission and once it's a safe environment to do that, they open up like crazy, and they're really starved for they really want to talk about this stuff. Mm-hmm. But you get this hyper masculine work environment. People are afraid to be vulnerable and afraid to ask for help. So it's frowned upon, and yet it's really starting to open up, because guess what? What we're doing isn't working. Mm-hmm. We have the second highest suicide rate of any industry, and 70% of all suicides are white males of working age. Mm-hmm. So what we're doing isn't working. We need to do something differently. So we're starting to reduce that stigma and talk about these issues and talk about mental health and talk about opioid and other kind of drug addiction and being dependent on alcohol or any of those, even legal over-the-counter kind of drugs. It changes who you are, and you become dependent on them. Mm-hmm. And so we're having those discussions now, and that's important because, believe me, 22 years ago, when I started doing this stuff, this was really weird. This was really strange, and we didn't really talk about it, and nobody wanted to say anything about it. And thanks to people like Cal Beyer, Sally Spencer Thomas, who, they're really starting to make some inroads into reducing that stigma and getting these discussions going.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting that you just very, without any effort whatsoever, moved into talking about one of those tough realities that we're dealing with in our industry, and that is mental health, addiction, and suicide. Yeah. And Cal's work is brilliant. One of my sources of inspiration is someone who Cal has a close relationship out in Minnesota, a guy named Bob Swanson, mm-hmm. Who left a painting contracting firm a number of years ago after his son, who was mentally ill and also was an addict, died by suicide. And I'm finding that really has become the driving force for organizations and companies to begin, in my view, taking the time and making the investment in putting people in rooms together to talk about things other than this is the newest coding, this is the newest tool, this is the newest technique, here's what we're doing with virtual reality. They're talking about the things that you know so well from reading my book, which isn't a long book, so you probably read it in about 5 minutes. But
it's a great book. Well, I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it too. And as you know from other conversations, that was my first. And I think actually it could be my last endeavor as an author, but it's it's just every opportunity that I get to talk about the things that are about people, that's where my conversation goes.
Right.
And so that's why I was intrigued with the tour, because I've read your stuff as well. I've heard you talk about alpha males and video, little video things that I've seen, including one I just looked at. I thought I'd seen it before. I clicked on one that you mentioned on LinkedIn as having been viewed by 17,000 people, and I'm sure it has been, and it's very informative. And you show results that point to what I would say is the Achilles heel of the alpha male. They can be very successful as drivers,
Right.
but they also, in driving, they run over people. Is the way I would say it.
It's so funny though. You mentioned love. That was one of the breakouts, and this one guy that had been removed from a project and his own team didn't want to work with him. He said to me, he came to me really whipped. He was so devastated by that happening, and he said, "Don't they know I love them and care about them so much? That's why I drive them so hard. I want them to be the best, and I want this project to be successsul." And I said, "No, I don't think they know that at all. I think that's part of the problem." So this is it is about love. It is about connecting as humans. And I went recently, a few months ago, to an Impact. It's Ironworkers Conference. They have NA and AA meetings throughout the conference. So if somebody tests positive for drugs, our normal way we do this in the industry is we hate you, we don't like you, we don't want you here, get out and stay out. And if an iron worker tests positive for drugs or alcohol, it's we love you, we want you to be here, we'll help you with rehab, we'll support you through the whole process, and we want you to be in this industry.
Yeah.
And what a difference that is, right?
Yeah. Seems like a pretty good idea, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
But I harken back to hearing that a very high-level union leader in one of the building trades was heard to say in a meeting where they were looking at educational programs, and that one of the programs was, let's call it a soft skills type program. And when they got to that line item, he just blurted out, "We don't need no effing soft skills. We need hard skills."
That's right.
And that's just a few years ago. And now, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this. I use the term, the challenge and the opportunity for, and I work a lot in unionized construction, as you know, but for contractors in general, and trades contractors, that the challenge they have is it hasn't been, and certainly is no longer sufficient just to train and develop people in the skills that are required to do the job. I refer to as you need to develop the whole person. And the part of the person that they continue to overlook, although you're probably seeing places where they're not doing that by virtue, again, your visibility and how widely you carry your message, that they're doing more of the whole person stuff, which is to talk about emotional intelligence, to talk about personalities and behavioral styles, which are good pieces of information that in particular that feed well into trying to move from not understanding two parts of your existence, understanding self, but also understanding the people that you have to deal with day to day.
Yeah, and I think we can take it even a step further, because when we do leadership programs, even down to the foreman level, we talk a lot about nutrition and stress and sleep and exercise, and what drugs are you taking over the counter or otherwise, and how does that affect performance and maybe safety? And so we're starting to have those discussions. And what we're finding is these people are highly stressed. I mean, they work really physically demanding jobs and long hours, and they're not sleeping well. And sleep can cause accidents, and it also can lapse into, if you get into insomnia, depression, anxiety, and those kinds of mental health issues. So we really focus on creating the best version of that human that he can or she can create. And that includes all of those things. And we didn't do that because we're really smart and magical. We did it because most of our programs include a bunch of middle-aged men. And when we said, hey, what do you want to work on this year? Probably 80, 90% of them said, you know what, I want to lose some weight. I want to start eating better. I want to manage my stress better. I'm not sleeping well. They were having all these health and other related kinds of issues. So that's what we gave them what they asked for. And now it's becoming really vitally important because of all the mental health stuff and suicide prevention. And a lot of that has to do with lifestyle choices and teaching them about what those choices mean. And there's a consequence to those choices. So teach them what those consequences are, and then educate them to make some better choices for them as humans. And guess what? They're better human beings. They're going to be better employees. They're going to be more productive. They're going to have longevity. They're not going to develop some autoimmune disease over time. That's where we're really wanting to get at. And guess what? That comes right down to, I care about you so much. I want you to be a healthy, happy, productive human being and retire from this industry full of health and not broken down and debilitated with a bunch of injuries.
Yeah.
So
I agree wholeheartedly. The other thought that comes into my mind is I'm sitting here thinking, alpha males. What about women? What about women?
Well, there are alpha women too. There are alpha women as well. I've worked with several women superintendents. But see, here's the thing. I think that when you look at the industry as a whole, we've moved toward this more collaborative project delivery. We've got IPD, we've got Lean, we've got ILPD, we got design build, design assist, CM at risk. They're all more collaborative project delivery. And yet we're kind of behind, as you know, on those soft skills and the people skills to be able to really do those in the best way possible. And here's the thing about women. Now, this is a gender stereotype, but it's true. And just from the data, I've got a graph of the emotional intelligence for men, 265 men and 65 women. And the women have higher interpersonal things, higher self-awareness, higher relationship skills, higher empathy skills. And those are the skills we need for these kinds of collaborative project delivery. And so I please women, don't give up on us. Don't leave the industry before we have a chance to make it your industry as well. And we're really making some good progress there, but we have a ways to go.
Yeah. How far away?
Oh man. It's like, I don't know. Yeah. I think a lot of folks are going to have to retire or leave, and I think the younger generations coming up embrace these concepts a lot more readily. So I think it's going to be maybe one more generation before we can really have a totally inclusive, open, where everybody feels like they belong and they can bring their best self to work every day. But we're talking about it and we're making inroads to accomplish that, and we're really starting to embrace it. Whereas 20 years ago, that would have just been irrelevant.
Yeah.
So we're getting better, but we have a ways to go. I think it's going to be another 10, 15, 20 years before we don't even have to think about it, talk about it, or mention things like, what about the women or people of color? It's just going to be who we are.
Yeah.
A diverse, inclusive, where people feel like they belong and they can show up.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate thing that I really think we can attain. It's going to take a lot of hard work, but when we get there, then this stuff we're talking about today will become a lot less relevant because it'll just be how we work.
Yeah, I'm sure. I know that you observe all the things that are going on in different parts of the industry and different aspects of being the construction industry, and one of those is to deal with the challenge of finding, recruiting, developing, and retaining personnel. I heard a talk that was really more about an economic outlook, and one of the statements that was made by the speaker, a really bright young guy from a very well-established firm that you and I both know well. He said, one of the things that people talk about a lot is the labor shortage as a problem in the construction industry. There is no labor shortage. This is basically what he said. There is no labor shortage. This is just a feature of our industry. Is that you in good times you have everything you need, and in complex times you don't. And if you're shutting down or minimizing your focus on being more creative about building the feeder lifeline from the population as it matures from grammar school through high school into post-secondary education, that's going to continue to create problems for you in getting people. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I don't know why this is such a shock, especially in the trades. If you treat people poorly over a long period of time, I think they're going to get fed up and do something else. Mm-hmm. And so I think, again, it's about caring for those people, reaching out, showing the love, making their lives better, and really showing people that this is an industry that cares about people. I think we sort of lost that sense of that over the past probably 10 or 15 years, that they became commoditized in some way. Mm-hmm. And so I think we're getting back to that it really is about humans building projects, and we have to start showing that we care about those humans. And again, I always tell people, if you make someone's life better, they're probably going to stick around to your company and to the industry if they feel like they're being taken care of. Mm-hmm. I think there's a two-pronged approach, though. I think there's another side of this where we lament that we don't have skilled labor instead of designing more projects where you don't need as much skilled labor. Mm. And so I think we could do that as well. And there's all kind of robotics and things that build walls now and robots. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we're going in that direction, but that's going to be years before that's viable. So I think for now, it's about, can we design a project where we don't need quite as much skilled labor, and then we can get the labor in there and train them to use whatever this new technology or whatever we've come up with, and give them a really good job with good benefits and vacation and healthcare and all the things that people want. And guess what? If we don't give it to them in this industry or at these companies, they can get it elsewhere. Yeah. There's other industries that have all of those things and work in a clean environment, and they care about their employees, and they really make their employees paramount, number one. Sure. And I think we've lost that in this industry for now.
And I agree with that as well. I'd also say that and it's made its way into federal legislation. The term apprentice or apprenticeships. Top of mind, the first thing that you and I think about when we hear the word apprenticeship is we hear tradespeople being taught the basics, put on the payroll of a contractor where they learn most of what they learn in the field on the job. And that's what I think when I hear apprenticeship. But it's now being applied to a variety of categories of job title across industries. So in a sense, it's we're getting diluted a little bit. But my bigger point is that one of the things that's still not sufficiently ingrained in the apprenticeship model. And again, this is my way of saying, I don't know if it's unique or if it's something I can copyright or trademark. But I talk about, again, the idea of an apprenticeship should be for a person to be able to learn from more experienced people the essential aspects of the job that they are the apprentice for, and also to teach them the skills they need to be able to be someone who's good to work with, or good to be supervised, or eventually a good person to work with. And those have nothing to do with the tool, with the materials, with the methods.
Exactly.
Have nothing to do with that at all. And that's still not an active enough part of develop. Even something as basic, and I get on this soapbox quite a bit as we failed on when people hear the term soft skills, which is my thing, other people as well, but I kind of like the idea. But when we talk about soft skills, they think about communication immediately. Some people think that they're synonymous. When you say soft skills, what you're talking about is communication. And what I remind people of that you understand well, and probably remind them in the same way I do, and that is, communication is a skill, certainly, and it's one that every person can improve upon. And there are different methods of communication and different reasons to communicate, et cetera, et cetera. But communication is vitally important for you to be able to let people know what your qualities are by virtue of what you say, and then also by virtue of what you do. And on the flip side, you as the listener, listen to what that person says, whether it's a recruiter, whether it's a foreman, a superintendent, a company president, a politician, whatever it is. And you listen, but you also look to see if what they say and what they do are supportive of each other.
You bet. It's so vital, and yet, like you said, some people reject that as really not as relevant. But I always give this example. Think about the best project you've ever been on. What were the relationships like? Probably pretty decent. People say, oh, almost like friendships. And then I say, okay, think of the worst project you've ever been on. What were the relationships like? And to dovetail off what you said about what was the communication like, right? That's always bad. It's always a negative. Nobody ever says, you know what? That was the best project ever, and I really hated everybody on that, but it was so good of a project. There is a huge correlation there. In fact, I think Penn State's done some studies about project delivery and those team dynamics, and those are leading indicators of project success, not just nice to have. I think it'd be good if we could, have a good team. They're part and parcel to successful projects.
Yeah. You and I speak with a lot of energy and enthusiasm and commitment to the ideas that we talk about. I'm amazed sometimes that people just kind of yawn at the idea of it's really important for you to make sure as you interact with someone else that the two of you understand each other.
Yeah.
Even if it's something as simple as getting an instruction from your supervisor, and they issue the instruction and they said, do you understand? And you said, well, yeah, of course. And then you walk away and you're trying to figure out, I have no idea what that guy just said.
Right. Exactly.
So what happens to me on the receiving end of what I didn't understand is I'm in trouble. I got a problem. I'm either going to make something up or I'm going to do something wrong. And, and we love that word in our industry. This is called human rework,
That's right. There's a great story I tell about a supervisor who said to me, I was coaching him, and he said, this assistant project manager refuses to give me these reports. I've asked for them a dozen times, and he just won't give them to me. I said, really? Wow, that's weird. Like, why do you think he won't give them to you? He said, I have no idea. I said, do you think he knows how to do those reports? He said, he damn well better know if he wants to be a project manager. I said, I think we just found the problem.
Yeah.
So I said, why don't you go ask him? And if he doesn't know, he's probably going to tell you, I don't know how to do that. And then you can coach him and mentor him and teach him how to do it, and it'll be fine. And he came back to me and said, that's exactly what it was, So that was a communication thing. But also think about this. That's what I told him to think about. Think about your leadership style that prevented him from saying to you, I don't know how to do this report.
Right. Which, by the way, means that leader needs to take a look at themselves and realize that they do not possess or do not practice certain qualities, also known as soft skills, that encourage a certain type of behavior in their subordinates.
Yep.
It's never about just one person. And if you're the leader, again, one of the things I said at a talk I gave before the pandemic, and I don't know why it just comes top of mind, but I said, leaders don't talk about leadership. They just lead.
Right.
And if they're a good to great leader, they know what that means. They know what leading is. They know that leading is not just telling people what to do.
Right.
It's not about just giving directions or controlling people. It's about influencing people to understand what your view is, to understand what your vision is for this project or this company or this industry, whatever it is.
Exactly. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. So I have two things I need to mention to you. Number one is that on recording, I'm going to invite you back for another interview in a few months.
Great.
Because
happy to do it.
I have more things that I want to talk about. And in the interest of something that was told to me to make this podcast interesting to more people rather than not, is to keep it to 30 minutes or so.
Mm-hmm.
That's a drive from the house to the job site or the office or what have you. And so I want to honor that. So I'll ask you the last question based on this really fast conversation, which I loved every minute of. Any other thoughts you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I'd like to give a gift to the audience, and it's just a lot of really cool little resources. And there's an emotional intelligence test, and there's something called the body battery inventory. There's something called the 4 quadrants, which connect people at the beginning of projects. There's the Tough Guy Survival Kit, 2nd edition. I mean, there's lots of things on this, and it's just brentdarnell.com/resources. And you can download all those things for free.
Good. That's wonderful to do that. And it'll be in the show notes, so it'll be in what people see. So thank you for that gift.
Sure.
I look forward to seeing you again. And I just want to say how grateful I am that you shared your time and your wisdom with me.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm honored to be here, and I love what you're doing. And anything I can do to help you or help the industry, I'm ready to get going.
Thanks, Brent.
Thanks for joining us today for this episode of the Soft as Steel podcast with your host, Dennis Duran. Dennis is the author of Soft as Steel and a leading speaker and trainer for organizations across many industries and verticals. To learn more about the work Dennis is doing to activate soft skills in the workplace, contact him at DennisDuranSpeaking.com. Be sure to check out his book, Soft as Steel, on Amazon or wherever books are sold. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or wherever you'd like to get your podcasts. And please remember to share this episode with your friends, colleagues, and anyone you feel would benefit from the conversation. We'll see you next time on the Soft as Steel podcast with Dennis Duran.